One September morning, I woke up to the sound of the phone ringing in the living room. My heart tightened, as if I knew something bad was about to happen. Just as I feared, Matthew's, my husband's voice came through, excited but cold. "Annie, Mom and I just arrived at the airport. Paris is going to be amazing. Make sure you take care of Dad, okay? We'll probably send you some pictures next week." The call ended abruptly with a long beep, leaving me in stifling silence. I put the phone down, feeling empty inside. The large mansion in the suburbs of Seattle gleamed under the morning sun but felt as cold and desolate as an empty fortress. I glanced around at the walls adorned with expensive art and crystal chandeliers. Somewhere inside, Mr. Henry, my father-in-law, lay motionless on the large bed in the west wing, where he had spent the past 3 years in a near catatonic state. Matthew and his mother Eleanor always had convenient excuses to leave me alone with the responsibility of caring for him. "I have urgent work, Mom needs a relaxing getaway," they would say over and over again. But I knew the truth. They didn't want to be burdened by responsibility. To them, I was nothing more than a tool to maintain the illusion of their perfect family image. At 33, I had given up my career and personal ambitions since marrying Matthew. At first I believed he loved me, but I eventually realized that what he truly needed was a compliant wife to please his mother. Eleanor liked to control everything, from the house's decor to the way I spoke. Her compliments always carried an undercurrent of supervision and control. "You're taking great care of Mr. Henry, Annie," she often said with a fake smile, but in her eyes I saw the real message. I wasn't allowed to abandon this role. I walked to the living room, stood by the large window and gazed out at the garden. The maple trees had started changing color, their red leaves vibrant, but I felt no sense of relief. Everything in this house suffocated me. It was a lavish prison, where I was trapped by obligations and promises I had never willingly made. I turned away from the window and entered Mr. Henry's room. He sat quietly in an old armchair near the window. His cloudy eyes seemed unfocused, staring at nothing in particular. Over the past 3 years he had become a shadow of his former self. A once successful businessman, now living like a faded monument. I sighed softly and adjusted the blanket over his legs. "Do you need anything?" I asked gently, not expecting a response. But to my surprise, he slowly turned his head and gave me a brief, evaluating look. It lasted only a moment but was enough to leave me unsettled. I stood still for a few seconds, then quietly left the room, wondering what had just happened. In the spotless kitchen, I washed the breakfast dishes, letting cold water run over my hands. Suddenly, the image of Mr. Henry's gaze from earlier resurfaced in my mind. I shook my head, telling myself I was overthinking. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. And maybe I should prepare for it. I set my teacup down on the table when I heard a faint call from the end of the hallway. At first, I thought I was imagining it, having grown used to the silence that engulfed this house. But then the voice spoke again, weak. "But, Annie, come here for a moment." It was Mr. Henry. Surprised, I quickly made my way to his room. He rarely called for me and barely spoke more than a few brief sentences. When I entered, he was already sitting up in his armchair, his gaze sharper than usual. "Do you need something, Mr. Henry?" I asked cautiously. He looked at me for a long moment before finally speaking. "I don't need anything, it's just... I think it's time I told you the truth." I froze in place. "The truth? What truth?" Mr. Henry sighed, his eyes shifting to the window. "Annie, how long have you been living here?" "Since I married Matthew, more than 3 years," I replied, puzzled by the strange question. 3 years, he repeated, his voice filled with reflection. 3 years you've lived here like a prisoner in your own home. Have you ever wondered why things are the way they are?" I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, I had wondered about it before, but daily responsibilities had made me forget those questions over time. "Annie, I'm not really sick," he suddenly said, his tone firm and resolute. His words hit me like a slap. I stared at him in shock, unable to believe what I had just heard. You're not sick! What are you saying?" Mr. Henry nodded slowly, his face devoid of any sign of jest. "I've been pretending to be ill. For the past 3 years, I've only wanted to observe how this family would treat me and each other when they thought I was dying." I held my breath. overwhelmed by the revelation. He had deliberately made himself appear as though he were on the brink of death all this time. "Then, why are you telling me this now?" I stammered. "Because I can't bear it any longer, Annie. I've seen enough. I know Matthew and his mother, Eleanor, have been scheming to take control of my estate and push you out." A chill ran down my spine. They've done what?" "They've been meeting with lawyers to prepare inheritance procedures for when I die," he said slowly, each word cutting through the air like a blade. "They've been planning everything for a long time, including how to ensure you won't get anything. To them, you're nothing but a temporary servant." I trembled with both anger and a deep aching pain. Matthew and Eleanor, the two people I had endured and served for years, had been cruelly conspiring against me behind my back. "I can't believe this," I whispered. Mr. Henry placed his hand on mine, his eyes filled with empathy. "I know this is hard to accept, but it's the truth, and I need your help to expose them." I stepped back, trying to steady myself. "But if they find out that I know—" "They won't leave me alone, Mr. Henry. That's exactly why we need to be careful," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're the only person in this house that I can trust. If you help me, we won't just protect what I've spent my life building, you can also free yourself from this prison." The room fell into silence for a moment. I lowered my gaze to my hands, thinking about everything he had just said. Finally, I gave a slight nod. "I'll help you." A glimmer of hope appeared in Mr. Henry's eyes, but I knew that the real battle had only just begun. I sat at Mr. Henry's desk, the light from the lamp illuminating the documents he had handed me. They contained financial statements, contracts, and letters exchanged between Matthew and Eleanor. Each line revealed a bitter truth. "Everything I've gathered is here," Mr. Henry said slowly. "But we need stronger evidence. They're very cautious, and these documents alone won't be enough to stop them legally." I clenched my hands, anger and helplessness swirling inside me. "So what do we do next, Mr. Henry?" He looked at me with a stern expression. "We need to record their key conversations. Their own words will be irrefutable proof." I nodded slightly. This wouldn't be easy, but I knew there was no turning back. I had lived under Matthew and Eleanor's control for far too long. It was time to reclaim my life. The next day, I discreetly began placing recording devices in the areas they frequented most: Matthew's office, the living room, and the dining room. Every day, I acted as if nothing was out of the ordinary, continuing my duties of caring for Mr. Henry and managing household tasks. One evening, when Matthew returned from a meeting, I overheard him talking to his mother in the office. His voice was filled with urgency. "We need to get this done quickly, Mom. The old man won't last much longer. I want everything transferred to my name before anything unexpected happens." Eleanor's voice responded, cold but cautious. "Don't worry. The lawyer said it'll only take a little more time. You need to stay calm and make sure Annie doesn't suspect anything." Hearing those words, I felt a chill run down my spine. They didn't see me as anything more than an obstacle to be managed. But now, I had something they didn't know about: the truth and the evidence. After gathering enough recordings, I brought them to Mr. Henry. He sat silently in his chair, his eyes deep in thought as the voices of Matthew and Eleanor played from the recorder. "I never expected them to be this ruthless," he said, his voice heavy. "Annie, I can't let them control my estate. They'll destroy everything I've built." "So what do we do next, Mr. Henry?" I asked. He slowly stood up, walked to the nearby bookshelf, and pulled out a folder. "I've thought about this for a long time but never had the courage to act. Now is the right time. I'm going to transfer all my assets to a charitable foundation. And you, Annie, will manage it." My eyes widened in shock. "Me? But how can I handle such a huge responsibility?" "You've lived in the shadows for too long, Annie," he said gently. "I've watched you over the years. You're much stronger than you think. You're the only one I can trust. If not you, then who?" I stood frozen, feeling the weight of his trust in every word. Finally, I nodded slowly. "I'll do it. For you and for myself." Mr. Henry smiled softly, but his eyes remained filled with determination. "Then we must begin immediately. We don't have much time, Annie." From that moment, I knew I had entered a battle not only to protect Mr. Henry, but also to reclaim my freedom. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, I stood on the balcony, gazing toward the main gate. Matthew's luxury car slowly pulled into the mansion grounds. Eleanor sat in the back seat, wearing oversized sunglasses and looking as proud as ever. From a distance, I could already hear their laughter and chatter as they got out of the car. "Annie, we're back!" Matthew's voice echoed from below. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what was to come. The plans Mr. Henry and I had meticulously prepared ran through my mind. Eleanor was the first to enter the living room, her smile smug and condescending as always. "Everything okay here, Annie? I knew you'd manage just fine. As for us, we had an amazing trip. Paris never disappoints." I responded with a simple nod, keeping my face calm. Matthew walked in right after, tossing his coat onto a chair. "How's Dad?" he asked without the slightest hint of genuine concern. "He's waiting for you both in the study," I said curtly. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Waiting? He has something to say?" "Yes," I replied, my gaze steady on her. "It's something important." Matthew and Eleanor exchanged puzzled glances but didn't ask further. They followed me to the study, where Mr. Henry sat upright behind his large desk. He appeared calm, though his eyes held a steely resolve. "Take a seat," he said slowly. Matthew and Eleanor sat across from him. The tension in the room grew so thick it was almost suffocating. "We need to discuss the family's assets," Mr. Henry began. "While you were in Paris, I finalized some legal arrangements." Matthew chuckled mockingly. "What arrangements? Dad, you've always left Mom and me in charge of everything." "Not anymore," Mr. Henry responded coldly. "All of my assets, including companies, real estate, and bank accounts, have been transferred to a charitable foundation. Annie will manage the foundation, with the goal of supporting the community." The room fell into absolute silence. Matthew and Eleanor froze as if turned to stone. It took a few seconds before Matthew shot up from his chair, his voice tight with anger. "What? You've got to be kidding, right?" "There's no joke," I interjected, locking eyes with him. "Everything has been signed and legally completed. There's nothing you can do to change it." "Impossible!" Matthew shouted, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He turned to Mr. Henry, his voice filled with fury. "She tricked you! Annie manipulated you!" Eleanor also stood up, trying to remain calm but unable to hide her unease. "Dad, you can't do this. We're your family. You're destroying everything we've built together." "Family?" Mr. Henry scoffed. "The family you speak of is built on deceit and schemes. I've spent my entire life building this estate, and all you've thought about is how to take it for yourselves. This is my final decision." Matthew slammed his fist on the table in anger. "You have no right to do this. We'll sue to get everything back." Mr. Henry remained unnervingly calm. "Go ahead and try, but remember I have solid evidence of your schemes. Every word, every action has been recorded." I placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. The cold, calculating voices of Matthew and Eleanor filled the room, outlining every detail of their plan to seize the estate. Matthew's face turned pale, while Eleanor staggered and sank back into her chair. They were left speechless. The evidence marked the end of all their ambitions. Mr. Henry slowly stood and looked at both of them. "You have 1 week to leave this house. That's all the time I'm giving you." Matthew and Eleanor sat frozen, their faces a mixture of fury and helplessness. I knew that from this moment on, their lives would never be the same. They left the study in a storm of anger without saying another word. I stood still, watching them go, my mind uneasy. Though things seemed settled, I knew those two wouldn't give up their ambitions easily. Mr. Henry turned to me, his eyes weary but filled with relief. "It's finally over," he said softly, as though reassuring himself. "We still need to be cautious, Mr. Henry," I replied. "They might try to retaliate." "I know," he nodded. "But they have nothing left. All the documents have been signed and transferred. My lawyers have confirmed that no one can overturn this decision." In the following days, the tension in the house remained high. Matthew and Eleanor were constantly on the phone with lawyers and advisors. Heated arguments echoed from Matthew's office every day, making it hard for me to concentrate on daily tasks. However, all their efforts led to one inevitable outcome. There were no loopholes to dispute the transfer of assets. One afternoon, while I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, Matthew walked in. His face was filled with anger and frustration. "Annie, do you really think you've won?" he growled, stepping closer to me. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze calmly. "This isn't about winning or losing, Matthew. this is about fairness. Mr. Henry saw the truth about both of you and decided to protect what he's worked so hard to build. Matthew sneered. You're so naive. You think this will get you away from us? We'll find a way to take everything back, no matter how long it takes. I didn't flinch. Go ahead and try, but I suggest you prepare for a different life. Your days of living in luxury are over. Matthew clenched his fists but said nothing more. He turned and walked out, leaving me standing there feeling more relieved than I had in years. On the final day of the one-week deadline set by Mr. Henry, trucks loaded with Matthew and Eleanor's belongings rolled out of the mansion. I stood on the balcony, watching as they left. Eleanor glanced back a few times, her eyes filled with both regret and hatred, but she said nothing. In the study, Mr. Henry sat by the window, watching it all unfold. When the main gate closed behind the last truck, he let out a long sigh. They're gone. This house has finally reclaimed its true essence. I walked into the room and sat across from him. Now we can start over, Mr. Henry. We can turn this place into something meaningful. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Yes. I let too many terrible things happen for far too long. But thanks to you, Annie, I can finally make things right. We're doing this not just for you but for others as well, I said, feeling the conviction in my words. We're going to create a place where no one will ever be treated unfairly like I was. Mr. Henry smiled. You truly are a strong person, Annie. I'm very proud to have you by my side. I didn't say anything more, but a deep sense of comfort filled my heart. The years of pain and suffering were now in the past. Ahead of me was a new path, one where I would no longer be a shadow in this house. I was now in control of my life, and I would never let anyone take that away from me again. A gentle breeze drifted in through the window, carrying the soft scent of the garden behind the house. I took a deep breath, feeling the freedom I hadn't known for so many long years. The mansion, once a symbol of power and luxury, had now been completely transformed. The cold, empty walls were replaced with vibrant paintings created by local children. Rooms that were once locked and silent were now filled with laughter and the sounds of workshops and community classes. As the president of the Henry Foundation, I still wasn't used to people addressing me with such respect and warmth. From a woman who was once dismissed and ignored, I had become a true leader. Miss Annie, we finished setting up the reception area, a young volunteer announced as I reviewed the event schedule. Great, thank you, keep following the plan, I replied with a smile, feeling relieved that everything was progressing smoothly. The grand opening ceremony of the Community Support Center took place that weekend. Families in need, elderly individuals, and young people seeking vocational training all attended. As I stood to give my speech, I saw hope and expectation in their eyes. Something I had once longed for but never thought I could achieve. We don't just aim to support people through hard times, I said to the crowd, but also to build a community where everyone has the opportunity to grow and thrive. This is not just a charity home. It's a place where people will find hope and unity. Applause echoed throughout the mansion grounds, but all I could hear was the strong beating of my heart, filled with pride. After the event, I found Mr. Henry sitting in his familiar armchair in the garden. He had declined to hold any further management role in the foundation, but always observed its activities with a satisfied gaze. Well done, Annie, you did it, he said as I approached him. Already. I couldn't have come this far without you, I replied softly. Mr. Henry was silent for a moment before speaking slowly. I've made many mistakes in my life, but trusting you was the best decision I ever made. Now, I've found the peace I've always longed for. I was deeply moved by his words. Mr. Henry, once a lonely and towering figure, had finally been able to lay down the burdens of his past and find redemption. He now spent most of his days writing his memoirs, documenting lessons he wished to leave for future generations. In the following months, the foundation grew rapidly. Educational, healthcare, and vocational support projects were implemented, bringing positive changes to the surrounding community. I was invited to speak at conferences and seminars, sharing my story to inspire other women facing oppression and injustice within their families. One day, while organizing documents in my office, I received a letter from a woman named Carla who lived in another state. She wrote that my story had given her the courage to leave a toxic relationship and start a new life. As I read each line of the letter, I couldn't hold back my tears. Annie, are you okay? Mr. Henry walked in, looking at me with concern. I'm fine. It's just that I never thought I could make such a difference, I said, quickly wiping away my tears. You've found your strength, Annie. That's the most important thing, he replied with a gentle smile. That afternoon, I stepped out into the garden. The gentle spring sunlight filtered through the green leaves, making me feel as though I stood in an entirely different world. This was the place where I had once felt imprisoned, but now it was where I belonged. A place where I could live and grow freely. The road ahead was still long, but I felt no fear. With the resilience I had built over the years, I knew I could face any challenge. I had emerged from the darkness and was now shining a light to help others find their own paths. This journey was no longer just about me. It was a testament to inner strength, perseverance, and the belief that justice will always prevail, and I, Annie, would continue to write new chapters in my life, alongside those I loved. Annie's story isn't just about triumphing over schemes and injustice, it's about rediscovering inner strength and self-worth. In real life, we may also face difficult circumstances, trapped by responsibilities and toxic relationships. However, only by standing up for ourselves, finding courage, and staying determined can we escape the darkness and create positive change for ourselves and others. What do you think about Annie's journey and the changes she made in her life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more meaningful and insightful stories about family life in upcoming episodes.